Okay, so we're gonna do a KWL chart. And so here's how it works. What you know, what you know. So what do you know about Frederick Douglass? If you don't know anything, does the name sound familiar? Using the context clues that I gave you about, what's going on with slavery and how we're about to read about people that are trying to get slavery cut out. Yes, you can do it. It's consider this your warm up two. So put this underneath your warm up one. But there's just some context clues. If you can't remember who he is, maybe the name sounds familiar, or try to just think, well, why would we be learning about this guy in the context of slavery? And then what do you want to know? So what do you want to know about him? So if you don't know anything about him, questions like, well, why do we need to learn about him? Or what did he do? Or what's important about him, right? And then the last one, what you learned. You can create that box, but do not fill it out yet because we have to actually do something before you can say what you learned. You didn't learn anything yet. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on that. And then once we finish, we are going to be watching a short video. I would like you to, yes. Okay, so if you can't come up with what you know about him, if you don't really know, just kind of give some ideas about it. And then talk about what you want to know. Ask at least 3 questions saying like, well, what could I possibly need to know about this person for our assignment today? Or what's the relevance of this person? Just at least 3, okay? Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. So now we watched that video. What did you learn? What if we learned from about Frederick Douglass? Were any of the questions that you came up with? Huh? What write it down, and then we'll go over it in just a minute. So some of you were doing that as we went. So great, you don't have a job to do right now. So we're going to continue our lesson. Today we're going to be reading The Church and Prejudice by Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass's The Church and Prejudice focuses on how people in the 19th century were prejudiced towards African Americans, especially in the church. People saw them as slaves and as less intelligent, mainly because slaves were denied an education, and quality education was not being provided to the freed blacks. He points out the hypocrisy that of how whites are only okay with black people as long as they stay in their place and their place is provided to them by white people. Is that an attitude that we still have today? Not necessarily with black people, but with other minorities. We're okay with them as long as they don't do anything that will make us, as long as they stay in their place, they're fine. So that black boy wouldn't have gotten shot if he had just minded it, like if he had just stayed quiet and, you know what I mean? We still do see that happening, or I'm okay with you being in my store until you get a little bit too rowdy, and then I'm going to kick you out, you know. So as long as we don't fit into the stereotypes that are labeled us, we're fine. But when you seem to embrace a stereotype or try to get a little too comfortable or familiar, that's when there's some issues with social reform. So that's something that he really noticed was hypocritical. So people would be like, oh, I'm totally on board with you, black guy. I'm totally on board with you. And then yet when that person tried to kind of advocate for their own rights, it was like, okay, well, I think you should be free, but you need to stop talking so much, right? Oh, is it on? And he's using the church as an example, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So here's some background on the abolitionist movement. Like I was saying before, we're jumping forward to 1848. So we're not going to be talking about the American Revolution today. We're talking about the road to the Civil War. So in 1841, which was 20 years before the Civil War began, there was a lot of abolitionist movement. So the goal of the abolitionist movement was to emancipate slaves and give equality to all men and end segregation. What does it mean to emancipate? Yeah, to free yourself from being owned by something. Even like, are you thinking of emancipation of a minor? Yeah, so emancipating from a parent, yeah, that could work too. There are different types of abolition goals, some wanting it to happen immediately, some advocating for more gradual reform. So some people were like, let's get rid of it now. It shouldn't be out. Let's just let go of it. Let's make it go away. And some people were like, we should do it, but it's not something that can happen overnight. So we need to gradually figure out a way to make it happen. Some people were like, for just there are whole different attitudes for it. Just like if we look at civil rights movements that are happening today. Let's look at immigration. Do people have different views on how to handle immigration? So even if they all believe, like, so let's say that there was a school of thought, everybody believed that immigrants should be able to come to this country with more ease. But each person's going to have a different idea of how that would be approached, right? And that's the same thing with the abolitionist movement. So there were a lot of people that wanted to free slaves, but they had different ideas of how it would work and how it would happen. And today we look back and we're like, just free the slaves. That's dumb. Why do they have slaves? But back then, slavery was hugely tied into the way that we used our economy and the way that we got through things. And so they needed to, a lot of people had trouble letting go of that idea. So the type of abolition that we're going to focus on today is based on radical abolitionism, which was fueled by getting rid of slavery based on religious ideals. So the people that would do this, they were basically saying it is completely against God's law to have slaves. If God sees everyone equally, so we shouldn't have slaves. That was basically the premise behind it. They were using the Bible to say we should abolish slavery. So abolitionist ideas became increasingly prominent, in northern churches and politics beginning in the 1830s, which contributed to the regional animosity between North and South leading up to the Civil War. So people in all different areas were getting angry, and northern churches were really, really advocating for slavery to be abolished. This movement was the focus of Frederick Douglass's speech and critique in the Church and Prejudice. So Frederick Douglass writes a speech, and he's looking at the abolitionist movement. He's focusing first on the church, because he's focusing on how the church is handling it. Because the church is saying we have all these great ideas and these great thoughts, and we want to change it because of this and this and this, and everybody's equal. But he's seeing there's some hypocrisy in the church. And he's seeing that, and then he goes from the hypocrisy in the church to just, in general, hypocrisy that people have towards Black people and towards slavery and towards freedom of the Black people within that, even like beyond that. Just in the abolitionist movement, people are saying, oh, it's okay that you're free, but don't get too comfortable. You know, we want you to be free, but we don't want you to step out of bounds too much. So we're gonna read that article and let my view what he's talking about. So we'll begin reading today by annotating the first. I'm going to do 2 to 3 paragraphs. And then while we do this, you should be looking for elements of rhetoric. After you annotate the speech, you will be writing 2 paragraphs analyzing the main purpose or premise of the speech while citing specific evidence to support your claims. You will also need to identify 2 specific rhetorical strategies that you see Douglass using in his speeches. So as we go, just highlight for, hey, I think this is parallelism. Hey, I think that this is diction here. Hey, I think that he is making an anecdote. Okay. You don't necessarily need to write anything down yet. Just do it. And then the 2 paragraphs, really, it's just a free write. I'm not asking for a paper or anything. But if you decide when we get to our paper, we're going to be writing a in-class essay on, I believe, Wednesday. If you decide that you want to write about this particular speech and then the speech I'm giving you tomorrow, these notes that you're taking will be really helpful to you. Okay. So let's get started with the reading. All right, is everybody there? At the South, I was a member of the Methodist Church. When I came north, I thought one Sunday I would attend communion at one of the churches of my denomination in the town I was staying. The white people gathered round the altar, the blacks clustered by the door. After the good minister had served out the bread and wine to one portion of those near him, he said, "These may withdraw and others come forward." Thus he proceeded till all the white members had been served. Then he took a long breath and looking out towards the door exclaimed, "Come up, colored friends, come up, for you know God is no respecter of persons." I haven't been there since the sacraments I haven't been there to see the sacraments taken since. At New Bradford, where I live, there was a great revival of religion not long ago. Many were converted and received, as they said, into the kingdom of heaven, but it seems the kingdom of heaven is like a net. At least so it was according to the practice of these pious Christians. And when the net was drawn ashore, they had to sit down and call out the fish. Well, it happened now that some of the fish had rather black scales, so these were sorted out and packed by themselves. But among those who experienced religion at this time was a colored girl. She was baptized in the same water as the rest, so she thought she might sit at the Lord's table and partake of the same sacramental elements with others. The deacon handed around the cup, and when he came to the black girl, he could not pass her. for there was a minister looking right at him, and as he was kind of abolitionist, the deacon was rather afraid of giving him offense. So he handed the girl the cup, and she tasted. Now it so happened next to her sat a young lady who had been converted at the same time, baptized in the same water, and put her trust in the same blessed Savior. Yet when the cup containing the precious blood which had been shed for all came to her, she rose in disdain and walked out of the church. Such was the religion she had experienced. If you're not understanding it, don't worry, we will go back over it. Right now we're reading with their grain. We're just taking in the information. We're going to start breaking it down after we read it, okay? Another young lady fell into a trance. When she awoke, she declared she had been to heaven. Her friends were all anxious to know what and whom she had seen there, so she told the whole story. But there was one good old lady whose curiosity went beyond that of all the others, and she inquired of the girl that had the vision if she saw any black folks in heaven. After some hesitation, the reply was, "Oh, I didn't go into the kitchen." Thus, you see, my hearers, this prejudice goes even into the Church of God. And there are those who carry it so far that it is disagreeable to them even to think of going to heaven if colored people are going there too. And whence comes it? The grand cause is slavery, but there are others less prominent. One of them is the way in which children in this part of the country are instructed to regard the blacks. Yes, exclaimed an old gentleman, interrupting him. So this is he's giving a speech right now, and then somebody during his speech actually talks, and so they wrote this down in the speech. He goes, "Yes," exclaimed an old gentleman, interrupting him. "When they behave wrong, they're told black men come catch you." Yet people in general will say they like colored men as well as any other, but in their proper place. They assign us that place. They don't let us do it for ourselves, nor will they allow us a voice in the decision. They will not allow that we have a head to think, a heart to feel, and a soul to aspire. They treat us not as men, but as dogs. They cry, "Stew, boy," and expect us to run and do their bidding. That's why that's the way we are liked. You degrade us and then ask why we are degraded. You shut our mouths and then ask why we don't speak. You close our colleges and seminaries against us and then ask why we don't know more. But all the prejudice sinks into insignificance in my mind when compared with the enormous inequity of the system which is its cause. The system that sold my 4 sisters and my brother into bondage, and which calls in its priests to defend it even from the Bible. The slaveholding ministers preach up the divine right of the slaveholders to property in their fellow man. The Southern preachers say to the poor slave, "Oh, if you wish to be happy in time, happy in eternity, you must be obedient to your masters. Their interest is yours. God made one portion of men to do the working and one to do the thinking. How good God is! Now you have no trouble or anxiety, but you can't imagine how perplexing it is to your masters and mistresses to have so much thinking to do in your behalf. You cannot appreciate your blessings. You know not how happy a thing it is for you, that you were born of the portion of human family which was the working instead of the thinking to do. Oh, how grateful and obedient you ought to be to your masters. How beautiful are the arrangements of providence. Look at the hard, horny hands. See how nicely they are adapted to the labor you have to perform. Look at the delicate fingers. So look at our delicate fingers, so exactly fitted for our station, and see how manifest it is that God designed us to be his thinkers and you the workers. Oh, the wisdom of God. I used to attend a Methodist church in which my master was a class leader. He would talk most sanctimoniously about the dear Redeemer who was sent to preach deliverance to his captives and set at liberty them that are bruised. He could pray at morning, pray at noon, and pray at night. That he could lash up my poor cousin by his 2 thumbs and inflict stripes and blows upon his bare back till the blood streamed to the ground. All the time quoting scripture for his authority and appealing to that passage of the Holy Bible which says, "He that knoweth his master's will and doeth it not shall be beaten with many stripes." Such was the amount of the good Methodist piety. Okay. If you're lost, we're going to go. But what general is annotating, what's the first thing that we do when we annotate text? What should we do when we look at something the first time? What is the first title? Proof and prejudice. Okay? And then we prediction. So what would our prediction have been? I don't know. What is it about? Yeah. Interesting. That's it. And awesome. Interesting. All right. Okay. Who wrote it? Frederick Douglass. And what do we know about him? He's an abolitionist. And what is important about him that gives him abolition? Okay, why am I forgetting my phone? Literally just oh, I'm so sorry. One second. Okay, so we're gonna start. We're gonna go for this. So let's do this. I was using for the method first. When it came to it, and the nomination, what are the two? Okay, so it's 1841. Saving the speech. Which we it's probably going to be less time and we can more. And what so when we look at neural this movement, we automatically first, oh, not just going to be more credit, right? And so why do you tell me so much? Why is it starting to did they show amazing television? No. And so why would he be starting in the north? Why is he starting in the north? So you can go in a place that supposedly there, it's still not even as this equality. And what's the appeal challenges? Walking around, all those, especially all the northern who were part of the movement, that they were so Christian radicals trying to abolish slavery. But I know that you think that you are, on a really high level, but look at what you're still doing. I need you to see this. So when I came north when I came north, I thought one Sunday I would attend a meeting at one of the churches of my denomination in the town I was staying. Okay, so I'm going to start with the white. I'm going to do white. So the white people gathered around the and the blacks were they were clustered at the door. The white people got to be the black people clustered by the door. So imagine for a second you walk into that church. So you guys have all seen what a church looks like. Okay, so the church is the reverend at the altar, and then the white people get to be serving. So someone explain some of this for any of us who are a little bit unsure. Yes, speak loud. Don't forget to speak loud. Right. It's a holy sacrament, and it's a right. It's a right of anyone that is a Christian, and this is a Christian church. It's the right of anyone that's a Christian to be able to partake in it. And so we have this church. He walks in and he sees all the white people up at the front receiving communion, and all the black people back in the corner. They're not even sitting in the pews. They're not even allowed to sit in the pews. They're just in the back by the exit, by the door, just kind of clustered, standing there waiting. So after the good ministry, what was it called? Opposite. Okay. So after the good minister had served up the bread, and others come forward. So who's coming forward? Who's still getting this happening? So the minister and others that come. So we take one group, so down, another group, so down, but it's all like okay. A lot of people really got right. No. As he proceeded, told all the blood members how to serve. This is also I want you to know. In some churches, and this was a practice back then too, and it's not necessarily, this might be different, but when you take the wine, they usually would use this cup. Okay, so like the farther back that you get, the more people have handled. Huh? They may like it, but I'm saying still there's Catholic people actually sitting around and they, they're like sick. So the white people get to have it before the black people. Like they get it, all sorts of people have it. And maybe is there necessarily going to be enough? No. Okay. So it has the white people coming in sections. That's because all the white members. And so then it's really important to do. Took a long like I said, it's disappointed, you're tired. Okay. So he goes, all right. So he took a long breath, which is, again, what was that form of? Why does he say a long breath? Why does he say, instead of saying a long pause? Huh? Yeah, it's imagery, and then imagery, though, will be, he's choosing his words very carefully. Okay, so imagery, okay. Remember I told you that figurative language will be several different ways. Language will have imagery, a long breath, and looking out towards the door explains. Okay, so have you ever witnessed with me or a teacher where your teacher is just not having a good day, but they've got to get the class started? So you hear them and they're like, "Hey guys, let's get started." Okay, and you know that your teacher's not happy to be teaching right now. You know the teacher's not happy to be doing something, student, whatever. But even though I explained that, did it sound like I was happy? No. Okay, so the picture. Then he took a long breath, exclaimed, "Come up, colored friends, come up for you. You know God is no respecter of persons." So when the colored people get to that, last, friends, and then he says, "For you know God is no respecter of persons." What do you think he means by God is no respecter of persons? Yeah, God doesn't care who you are. So, yes, Lucia. We do. Yeah. Okay, so he's doing two things there. One, he's actually doing it. He's going, "Come up, friends. How does a kid in black? You can see that's true." So it's like he's saying, "We don't care that you have this. God doesn't care. So you're allowed to do it, and look how nice you are. I need to do it, but that's what you do." It's saying God no respecter of person, but then having them come back, what's he doing? What is that? Is it when you say one thing? Yeah. It's also it's on it. And then beyond that, there is something about it. Okay. I haven't been there to see the fact that it's like, so what do you feel about narrativity? Now let's start. So it starts us out in the Northern Church. So, okay, the North that there's issues, and it's such that the North also has problems. Let's look at now we're back in the South. In New Bedford, where I live, there was a great revival of religions. We're talking about how um, do you remember when we were talking about the radical abolitionists? This is what he's referring to. There was a revival of religion. There was a revival of people having access to God. Religion is living in the world of religion. Okay? So, radical abolitionism. Not long ago, many were converted and received, as they said, into the kingdom of heaven. Why do you think these are received? When we put the quotation mark, it's to say what? It's not necessarily sarcasm. Sarcasm is maybe just doubting. Like, I don't necessarily believe this is true. This is what they said, but I don't necessarily agree. If you're putting in all quotes, like if you're putting a quote, it's different than when you just put one word. You're casting doubt on whether or not. Casting doubt on whether really they were truly. As I said, into the kingdom of heaven. It seems the kingdom of heaven is like a net. Okay, so right there, the kingdom of heaven is like a net. Similarly, why is it like, why is it silly? And then what does it do? What is that? What does it do? Similarly, and when we choose our very transformation, you should have a comparison. At least to the practice of these pious Christians. And when the net was drawn, we're kind of out and pull out the thing. Always you take the things that you don't like, so you go through, and maybe you want all the cactus on this corner and all the whatever other salmon on this corner. And then you say, oh, this fish looks too sick, throw it back, or this fish is already that one, or this is too small, not going to sell well. You call out the fish, you separate and change the fish, throw it back to your water. Well, it happens now that some of the fish had rather less to go. Who are the fish that had less? Who is the captain? And these were sorted out and passed by themselves. So this revival of religion, black people was little time. We're sorted out and passed by themselves. So yeah, you're saying God loves you, but what's the other? One of those who is he was baptized in the yes, but she was baptized in the what water? Saved. He's going to come up later. What is that a form of? She was baptized in the same water as the rest. She baptized the Lord's table and take part of the sacramental elements. Talking about a into the black girl, he could not pass. There was a minister looking at that. He was reiterated with sex. That's the whole reason for this. Right. So does the deacon want for the trial? No. Did she even be there in their lives? And they're like, oh, okay, you're here. Baptize you, and they told you that God loves you, but now you're a thing here. Right? So they maybe now they're doing something a little strange. So he says, giving the test. If you take now it so happens next to her sat a young lady who had been converted. What? I mean, Canadian leaders don't do this. That young who had been converted at the same time, baptized in the same water, put her trust in the same message. What do we see over and over again? Same. And they were just here about to happen to what are you doing now? What's the call when you have the same conversations? Parallelism. All of these now make parallel. Yeah. Exactly. Perfect word. To emphasize that there was no difference between them except for the color of that girl's skin. Okay? So, yet, when they continue the precious blood, which had been shed for all, that is all. Her, she rose to the stage and walked out of the church. That was the religion she had. What do I think that she is? What's wrong with it? That's what the religion is. Is it a girl who just got totally insulted, or is it a white girl who is totally insulted? Huh? The white girl, we think it's a white girl? And what religion did we do? black girl got the cup away from it, and it was passed to the white girl, and the white girl would not touch the cup anymore. So the white girl, for saying this was the religion, what was the religion of the white girl? What? She was self. Oh, okay. So yeah, so the hypocrisy, right? The religion experience. Hypocritical and more connected and that's what she is. That was the word she always existed. Okay, we're gonna do one last paragraph together, and I think you guys have a handle on how to break this up, right? Okay? No? I'll go over the rest of them with you. I just won't break them down in this one. You guys will fun, but another young lady fell into a trance. Okay, so what he means by this is that a lot of times people with like great visions or maybe speaking in tongues, like a mistake. So another young lady fell into a trance. She wrote she what associations right she could bring it well anxious to know what she should see it. So she told the whole story. But there was one good old lady whose curiosity was unlimited. She thought to herself, as it is. But first off, that's a really insulting thing to say. Well, we're black people in heaven. It's like saying dogs in heaven. It's like, of course they're in heaven. Why are you including them? And it's really and then saying, but were they in heaven? Did you see any black folks there? Oh, maybe it's separate up there. And so the girl, some hesitation, their reply was, I didn't go into the kitchen. Yes. Yeah, this is girl lady. Do we think he's sarcastic here? Do we think he's sarcastic here too? Why do you think he's sarcastic? It's rude. So, good lady, so sarcasm. And then, what does this one say? Oh, I think it was right, the black people have a place. They think they can be Christians because they have a place. Black people. That was the mentality. Okay, so we're gonna go to the next one. I want you guys to study it. But I'll still go over the rest. So that's to see my hearers. This prejudice goes even into the church of God. Okay, so now he's switching. Oh, before we do move on though, he's telling us a bunch of stories. What's the purpose of these stories? He's telling us several instances of where he's seen prejudice in the church. What's the purpose of these stories? What are they called even? So they're anecdotes. Why are these anecdotes important? Yes. Let's hear it. Right. He's showing, so it's an anecdote, and while it's not necessarily, this is a proven fact, it does give some basis to what he's saying. So have you ever been talking to your friend and you're trying to tell them why you're mad at your friend? Like you're trying to tell your friend why you're mad at them, and they're like, well, can you give me an example when I did this? And then you can't think of anything right off the top of your head. And so does it take away the credit of like the fact that you're mad at them for doing something? So it's the same thing. He's saying there's prejudice in the church, and here's where I've seen it. And then he's painting this hypocrisy for the people, because do you think it's only like, do you think his audience were only black slaves? No, there are probably abolitionists there that were doing this very thing. And it's saying, you know what, I see like you're trying, but you're still not trying hard enough. You're still not there yet. Okay. So thus you see, my hearers, this prejudice goes even into the church of God, and there are those who carry it so far that it is disagreeable to them to even think of going to heaven if colored people are going there too. What does that mean? It's disagreeable to them to even think of going to heaven if colored people are going to be there too. What's that mean? Right. I would rather just not go if I had to share it with colored people. That is such a powerfully rude and horrible statement, but that's how he's seeing it. That's how they're feeling. It's like, well, they be in the kitchen. We still should be separate. I don't want to have to share my heaven with them, right? And once comes it, the grand cause is slavery, but there are less prominent. One of them is the way in which children in this part of the country are instructed to regard the blacks. So is it just slavery that causes this division among white and black people? Well, what is it? The way that we teach our children to think, the cultural ideas that we have that are different, right? So then this is when a man interjects, where he says, "Yes," exclaimed an old gentleman, interrupting him. "When we behaved wrong, they were told, black men, come catch you." So this was a common statement at the time. And necessarily, I mean, it's nothing that we hear anymore, thankfully. But at the time, when a white child would do something wrong, their parent might say, "Oh, careful, a black man's going to come and steal you." Okay, so even from a young age, it's indoctrinated that being black is not desired, and it's not as good, and they're not as anything, right? So this was just, it shows the attitude. Yet people in general say they look like, yet people in general will say that they like colored men as well as any other, but in their proper place. Think about that, the condescension here. They assign us that place. They don't let us do it for ourselves, nor will they allow us the voice in the decision. So they're like, "No, you should have free rights, but go sit over there and have them there. No, don't come over here. Stay there. No, don't try to get any more rights. Stay there. No, I know that it looks like I have more rights than you, but no, I support you. Just don't come over here. Don't try to don't try to have equal rights to me necessarily. I just want you to be a slave, but like you want to be in the same place with me? I don't know about that, right? They will not allow that we have a head to think and a heart to feel and a soul to aspire. They treat us not as men, but as dogs. They cry, "Stew, boy," and expect us to run and do their bidding. That's the way we are liked. So even freed slaves would still have to deal with being treated that way. So white men pretty much could say whatever they wanted to people, even if they were a freed slave in that time. That's the way we are liked. You degrade us and then ask us why we are degraded. So he's talking to the abolitionists here. He's saying, your culture has degraded us, but then they ask us, why do you let yourself be degraded? But you're doing it to us. You shut our mouths and then ask why we don't speak. You close our colleges and seminaries against us and then ask us why we don't know more. Has this attitude, I really want you to think about this, has this attitude changed? Do we still have slaves? No, we don't have slaves. And I don't just necessarily mean to African American people. I mean, has this attitude changed to different groups that are different social groups that have experienced prejudice in some way throughout the time? Do women still have this attitude on them? Do some people have this attitude towards women, even though we have equal rights? Yeah. Do minorities, do immigrants still have this attitude on them? Yeah. Do African American people still have this same kind of attitude on them? Yes. It may have evolved into less of an overt offensive thing, but it's still there. That attitude, well, that boy wouldn't have been arrested if he had just been doing what he was supposed to do. Or, a woman's place is in the home. When a woman tries to talk out too much out of turn, that's not okay. And or when we look at a person from another culture and we look down on them because they don't know all the same things that our culture knows, but we don't know all the things that their culture knows, right? So we see this still today. It may look different, but it's the same monster. So, but all this prejudice sinks into insignificance in my mind when compared with the iniquity of the system which is its cause. What's the system that caused this problem? Slavery. The system that sold my four sisters and my brother into bondage, and which called in priests to defend it even from the Bible. So back then, there was actual biblical reference to slavery being okay. So priests would defend it. There were priests that defended it. The slaveholding ministers preach up the divine right of the slaveholders to the property in their fellow men. The Southern preachers say to the poor slave, "Oh, if you wish to be happy in time, happy in eternity, you must be obedient to your masters as their interest is yours." So, do you understand what they're saying right there? What are they saying right there? What are they saying right there? Tatum, what are they saying right there? If you wish to be happy for now, or if you wish to be happy in time, happy in eternity, you must be obedient to your masters. What are they saying? Yeah, if you want happiness, like you're not as human, like your master is still like your master. He's the most important person. So if you want to be happy, listen to your master. He has your best interest in mind. Did masters have their best interest in mind? Look at Frederick Douglass. His father was a white man. His mother was a black woman, a slave. That tells you something extraordinary there, that his father was a white man when his mother was a black slave, that he was how he came about. Masters did not have the best interests of their slaves. And then it goes on to say, he basically just breaks it down. I really want you to look at this paragraph because it's such an interesting and really just confusing and infuriating paragraph. It talks about how, well, God made your hands really rough and callous so that you could work. But look at our hands, they're so delicate. How could we pick cotton? How could we do all the rough work? And guess what? You're so lucky. You don't have to think because your master is thinking for you. Feel blessed that God created you not to have to think, because we are the ones that have to think for you. All you have to do every day is just go out and do work, and then we have to do all the rough thinking about money and religion and buying property and selling property. Look at the condescension in this. How much condescension. And then he ends it on this. I'm kind of just skipping, but he ends it on this. He says a Bible verse, and this is a Bible verse that is quoted from the Bible as a rationalization for slavery. He says, "He that knoweth his master's will and doeth it not shall be beaten with many stripes." What does that mean? What happens if you disobey? Right. Now, contextually, if we're looking at the biblical context behind this, it's probably it's a metaphor. A lot of biblical things are metaphors. Yes. Yeah. Right. Right, but they're taking this and they are perverting it. That's a great point. They're taking something that was written for, hey, don't steal, don't do this wrong, and they're perverting it so that they can own slaves. And then he says this to people, even as they're seeing, like, so it's okay that your master beats you because you're just doing wrong. Okay? So I want you to break this down, but do you feel like you have a better understanding of this article now that we've gone through and really looked at it? So what your job is tonight is this. I'm going to show you. You have, I'm going to pass this out in just a moment, but responding to Frederick Douglass. So you're going to finish annotating this on your own. You shouldn't have any problems since we went over the whole article together. Sorry, the speech. In 2 or more paragraphs, explain the main points or the premise that Frederick Douglass is trying to make in this piece. Use at least 3 pieces of evidence from the text and explain 2 rhetorical strategies that he uses. Okay? So find the main point, find 3 pieces of evidence to support the main point, and then explain 2 rhetorical strategies. We found a lot in there, right? We found a lot of rhetorical strategies. Pick the 2 that you think are the ones that were really interesting that he used, that really, really drove the point home. Was parallelism used to exemplify a point? Why did he use so many anecdotes? Why did he choose specific words the way he did? And then explain them. Don't just write down he used diction. Explain why diction helped him make his point better, okay? Highlight in one color or double underline what you think is the main point in the evidence you found. So I think the main point you would highlight in blue, and then you'd highlight all the evidence in blue, or underline it twice. And then highlight in the second color or single underline the 2 rhetorical strategies used. So if you're talking about diction, you'd either highlight it in green or underline it once, okay? Really simple homework assignment tonight. Just annotate and then do this, write a 2-paragraph response. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm not looking for a novel. I'm just looking for your response to this. And I'm sure you should have some sort of response to this, right? This was a powerful article. This is a powerful speech, okay? Thanks, guys, for bearing with me. I'm going to pass it out, and then you guys can work the rest of the period on it.